Hey guys, welcome back to another session with Seth. So I'm really fortunate today because not only do I have an awesome person, but I've got a really good friend. I've been fortunate to work with Matt for quite a while now. So guys, I want to introduce you guys to Matt Young, CEO of Blue Sky Solutions. Say what up, Matt?
Hey guys, how are you?
Matt's a killer, by the way, guys. And so just a fun little fact about Matt is Matt does like, I guess, quote unquote CrossFit. Is it actually CrossFit?
It's like HIIT training, the high intensity, half hour stations.
But I mean, would you say that you're like a registered badass in this, or do you think that like there's more to go?
This is where I want to be. I'm on the forever pace.
Forever pace?
As long as I can do what I'm doing forever, I'm good.
So guys, when Matt started telling me about this workout routine he does, like him and his wife, they're all like super committed to the gym. I was like, dude, I didn't want to tell him, but when we started working together, I was like kind of being a lazy slob. And Matt was telling me, and I was like, dude, I got to pick my ass up and get better. And I didn't tell you this, but you actually encouraged me to get better, even though that. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Bro. That's great.
So Matt, I mean, I guess so your company's in Fort Myers, Florida.
Yeah.
You've been in business a long time. You guys you were a lawn operation, you added pest control, you've done some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you had to pick one thing that you're like, hey, this is super unique about Blue Sky, like what would you tell everyone is super unique about Blue Sky?
We've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
Our staff and everything. And we can come up with all kinds of like miracle things that are great, but we show up.
Yeah.
That's really, every person is like, you answer the phone and the guy showed up. And where we're from in Fort Myers, that seems to be a difficult thing to get people to show up. So we show up. As far as lawns go, we use great products and we have a great program.
Yeah, one of the things that always stuck out to me, like from a service quality standpoint, is you are laser focused on like actually true top quality product, true top quality service. And you've said that to me since day one. And I mean, the reality is a lot of companies, and I mean, even me for that matter, is like sometimes I think about the business of pest control and I'm like, man, the business of pest control is, going out at some sort of regiment, getting a credit card, and you just hit your account, right? And then the other side of it is like that laser focus on quality. And you've kind of figured out the magic secret sauce from both, I think, which is kind of unique.
You know where I think it started is that I started as a pre-treat termite tech. And pre-treats are a dubious business. Yeah. And so there's a thing called the program. And so to get your guys on the program, you have to be dubious. And I don't like to be like that.
Yeah.
So I can't send my guys out and do anything that's not correct. And so that's just the policy, we don't bend the corners. We don't do the program. That way we feel good about what we're doing. I mean, whether it's working or not, I mean, if we get a call back, it's not because of the chemical necessarily. It could be just the customer.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, man. And that's something that's always stood out to me about you, like your obsessiveness with like making things happen. You know what I mean?
We have a long-term staff, and a lot of our staff have been with us 10 years, 7 years. Our customers know them. And so, we have a really good, solid base. And without them, I don't think we'd be where we're at.
I will say is I would agree with you. So I've visited obviously lots of companies across the nation, and the day when I was down in your office, like it was pretty impactful to see the guys getting out of the trucks. Like the guys are talking about working out or whatever they were doing. It was almost like this culture of competitiveness, but the competitiveness wasn't just about like, I'm a better lawn tech. It was more of like, I'm just a cooler human being than you. And they were all like, and I haven't been down there in a little while, but the guys were like all fit. They're like ready to get to the gym. They were all like awesome.
This morning, I had to move my workbench and stuff to the shop just to get it out of my way. And they're down there
today
competing to do push-ups and, bench pressing 135, one big bar with 245s. They're like, I should be able to do this 10 times. And how many times he's ripped. So yeah, he's got the record. I think he did it like 50 times.
135 for 50?
Yeah.
So how many did you do? Did you go for it?
I'm not doing it.
I mean, come on.
I work out in the morning. I'm good.
Yeah. So I was telling you this morning, I got sucked into one of those stupid competitions, and I almost can't even like move my arms today. And but I will tell you this: if I was at your office, if I did 135, how many times do you think you could do 135?
I think I could do 50.
50 straight?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I could do 50 straight.
50 push-ups. I mean, I weigh 200 pounds.
I could do 50. Yeah, you could do it.
I think so.
So, you got me all thinking about working out now. We're supposed to like be providing content.
Let's do some burpees. You ready?
Yeah, I can do some burpees after here. We'll shoot some for the B-roll.
Well, I'm really interested. I'm super thankful you invited me up, and I'm
Yeah.
appreciative to be involved and even considered, and like to know if you have, you know, any questions for me.
I've got a ton of them. So one of the things, and I'm very fortunate that I actually understand your business, right? And we know our audience. And so I think like one of the things that you do really uniquely, and it's been something that through the time we've known each other, I've seen you really progress through this process, is like maybe we should talk a little bit about like managing like a family dynamic, right?
Sure.
Super tough, but I think it really, really helps people. And I think that like for you over the last couple of years, that mindset change has like dramatically impacted your business. So I mean, so maybe talk about that. Like a lot of people who are in our industry have family members in the business. And so, I mean, so let's talk about like the transition you had, and, how you went from, being, there ultra supportive of everybody, and ultimately understanding like that they're, even if they're a family member, they're still actually an employee. Maybe we should talk about that. So like, let's talk about that a little bit.
It's a tough one to talk about. The family dynamic, you can, if you're a business owner, you can look at it. Are we going to succeed this business? Do you want to work? So, my daughter works for me. My son works for me. My brother-in-law works for me. My mother-in-law part-time works for me. And through the whole process, we've had to go through ups and downs.
Yeah.
A lot of times you put expectations on people that they may not be ready for, they may not want. And a lot of times you let your emotions get involved, and you take things to levels that they shouldn't go to in business. So those things had to be quelled.
Yeah.
Or brought back down to basics. And I think accountability was the answer to all of that situation. Once we said, listen, we love each other and everything's even, but it's a business and we have to be accountable for every action we do. It made it a lot simpler. Then the accountability became the focus over the personal dynamic.
How did you go through that, right? So if you think about this, and I know you're a super caring person, right? So how did you go through the mindset shift to where you're like, hey, this is my family. Like, hey, they may not be doing as well as a regular employee would be doing. And it might not just be family. Remember, this can be friends in a business too, right? And so for people that are like watching this, is like, it could be friends that we just care a great deal about. So how do you make that mental transition? Because you did it incredibly well. And I know it was hard, but how did you go from going, hey, I've got a family member, they're not doing as well as they probably, as an employee that I can hold ultra accountable. How did you mentally get through that? Because I remember going through part of this with you, and like, it must have been tough,
Well, I'll say to the people that know who I'm talking about, it's out of love. I went through all this, and it was very painful. I had to work on myself.
Yeah,
first.
I remember.
I had to get, physically in shape. I had to get mentally stable, and I had to be accountable for my stuff.
Yeah.
Before I could really, move forward with working with the other people. Otherwise, it was just a back and forth. And now I think that everyone that deals with me in business has a really good opportunity to move forward if they want it, if it's for them. And if it's not, there's no hard feelings. There's no bad blood. Christmas will still be good.
Yeah. And I think like, if I take a step back, and again, I know the nuances, but if I take a step back, I think one thing you've done that's remarkable is you've actually navigated it to a positive outcome. And too often when we work with companies that are family dynamics, it's actually not a positive outcome. It's actually a very negative outcome. And I think in your scenario, to your point, Christmas is actually still going to be great at your house. And that's a hard thing for people, man. That's a hard thing.
I think I started the business not necessarily to make money. So the money isn't the deciding factor in all of this.
Yeah.
It was a decision to try to get some generational change in my whole family.
Yeah.
Some of us came from some hard places, didn't have opportunities, and I wanted to be able to give more to my generations coming up. And that's what I'm doing. So that's the basic of the intent.
Kind of keeps the target way out there
Versus
versus
just about the money, then the money would dictate the decision.
So, and I'm going to ask you a really tough question. So you've done this really well in your family. You've done it. I mean, you've done it. Like you've done it. Like you pulled it off for the most part.
I think so, sure.
And so if you think about the rest of the team now, as you went through this learning, and the most toughest part, which was a family dynamic, is how has that transitioned to actually help you be a better CEO for the rest of the team?
It's a great question.
Hard question.
No, I think, it takes you down to where you came from. I came from an owner operator. I was ambitious. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I started. And once I got to a certain stage, I had to learn, I had to change, and I had to get to those things. So to get to that mindset, first I had to get to the mindset to help the rest of the employees get there. So if every day I considered where we're headed and kept track of everything and kept organized, inevitably they followed that trait. I thought it was going to be difficult. I thought I was going to get a lot of resistance. Everyone really likes discipline and structure. And so once I got the discipline and structure in my life and just made it a pattern, it just kind of followed suit.
When was the aha moment, or what made the aha moment happen when you said, hey, you know what, we've been doing it this way for a long time, and all of a sudden it clicked and you went, wait a minute. And you said, this is my responsibility. And I remember roughly when this all took place, but like what clicked? Like what was it when you were like, shit, this is the moment? Like what was that? Do you remember that time?
Oh, sure. Yes, really tough questions because it brings in a whole situation. You know, we had the hurricane, our house got flooded.
That's right.
I was standing in my front yard and I was all alone. You know, I had to fix my house. I had to fix my business. I had to deal with a whole family that was displaced all of a sudden, 5 cars that were flooded. And at that moment, when I realized I was all alone and I had to do this, everyone's all alone and they have to do it. And it's unfair to enable people to not do that and then be put in that situation one day where they're like, I don't know what to do. So it's my job to teach them once I realized that. So, I mean, it took me a long time. I was 51 when the hurricane hit.
Yep.
And so it took me that long to get that aha moment.
Yeah, gosh, I you know, it's funny as you say, and I want to be careful here because I know how tough this time was for you guys. But I remember like progression, things are happening, and then all of a sudden the hurricane came, and it was like, and I just remember how scary this whole thing was for you guys, and I just remember triaging and like it was crazy, man.
Well, I had this beautiful list of my year's goals.
Yeah.
And I just crumpled it up and threw it away because it really was impossible at that point.
So I will tell you this, and I didn't share this with you because I knew my role in our relationship was to keep us focused, right? Like I knew that was our role, and I never shared this with you. I'll share it with you now. When I spoke to you the week after that hurricane, and I started to hear the stories of what actually took place in the flooding, it didn't click how bad it was for me. Like it didn't click because I didn't really understand. Like I mean, I did, but I didn't because I wasn't in Fort Myers at the time.
Sure.
And then about a week after our conversation, I was like, all right, cool, we'll get recovered. You know, positive thinker is somebody who I used to work with did and I think you knew this. They ran a truck down of a bunch of equipment and water and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just to help people. And they'd asked me, we had donated a bunch of water and stuff to help them out. We they had truckloads down there. And he started sending me pictures back. And when I looked at these pictures, I was like, holy shit. Like the news was one thing, but the news hypes things up. But when you actually saw when the rubber met the road, what was actually going on. And then I realized like where your family was in this whole like thing, I was like, whoa. And for the very first time, and I didn't share this with you at the time, the very first time I was like, shit, there's actually like a legitimate chance that like this is not like they may not recover from this thing.
For sure.
And in my mind, I clicked in, I went, how in the hell do we help these guys? Like, and I didn't share this with you at the time because I knew it was going to throw us off. And I was like, what do we do? And I was like, we triage everything. What do we need to do? What do we need to do? And frankly, you made a decision which a lot of guys didn't do. And I can tell you this, I know guys in our industry who actually like are no longer in business in that market. And you said, fuck it. We're going to do it. We have to do it. And you actually went and recovered. And I mean, you got back on track. I mean, not really back on track, but 6 months later, you guys were basically back operating.
That year, we lost 30% of the business from the storm.
Yep.
We raised prices and lost our biggest account.
Yep.
$250,000 a year.
Yep.
And we grew by 7%.
Yeah.
And so it was amazing.
It was amazing. Like it was the first time, I mean, it was the first time that I was actually super nervous about one of the companies that we work with, where I was like, dude, I don't know because meanwhile, when that was happening to you, we're having friends call us from down there. And I think I shared with you and they're like, dude, we're shutting down. Like companies larger than you guys, we're shutting down. And it was crazy.
We did the same thing we did in COVID. We just did an outreach. Our guys called everyone. We called 1,700 people and said, how are you doing? Do you want us to come out? Do you need anything?
That's right. That's right.
That connection with the customers again, helps. It helps a lot. We have a lot of customers that live in different parts of the country. They call us like, can you look at our house and see how it's doing? So we have a concierge service where we just send them a picture of their house every month, and they feel so much better about it. But something that happened during the storm that was good is I realized I was all alone. But for my business, I had Pest Daily. You know what I mean? And Pest Daily is a place where a business guy like me who has no training, who didn't work for a corporation, can go and get some help and not be alone. You know, so a lot of guys out there that are wondering where to go, there is a place.
That's super kind of you, man.
And I found that place, you know, through people and just meeting you, but I needed it.
Yeah.
I had been stale for 5 years. We had been at 1.7 million, 1.7 million, 1.7 million. You know, we did 1.84 last year.
Yep.
With the hurricane, with the
crazy,
all the stuff that happened. And all of that is because I'm not alone anymore.
That's super cool, man.
Thank you, bro.
No, dude, I love it, man. So, dude, I've been through this with you, so like I kind of like, you know what I mean, like,
sure.
And it's I love outside. I appreciate the support of our company, but like it's super kind of you, man. So I mean, so what's on the horizon, man? So you shifted, you're back CEO, driving the ship. I mean, what's on the horizon for you, man?
All the team is ready. We're just trying to develop them and get them in the right mindset so that they can think bigger than they already are. I think that a lot of people get complacent. They're very happy with their schedule, their life. But, you know, if you can see the bigger picture, you know, there's other places to go, and they have families and they have generational things that maybe they'd like to change. And I'd like to help them get there.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, all right. So one last tough question. You ready? Here's your tough question.
Sure.
So our audience that watches this, our audience in Pest Daily, our guys that are brand new in the business, trying to figure out, they're driving around in a truck right now, may not even have a company yet, right? And they're thinking about it. We got guys in here that watch our stuff that run $1 billion organization. And so if you had to think back and say, Matt, when you started your business, you know what I'm going to ask you, what would the 53 now, 52? How old are you now?
I'll be 53 in September.
All right. So 53-year-old Matt, what do you tell to Matt when you started Blue Sky?
I would definitely say, trust that you're going to be successful and get involved in the programming, the technology, and the recurring revenue. Don't chase one times. Don't try to get quick money. Build, it stacks, and that compounding in years from now, you'll know, you'll appreciate it.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting, isn't it?
It's hard to get your head around at first, you know, that you know, each job you do is so important, but each one stacks up. Get help as soon as possible so that you can be out there talking to your customers. You can be going to the neighbors. Every customer I've gotten has been from another customer, either visiting their home or going to their neighborhood or visiting that business. Always. So visit your customers.
Do you know what's interesting? You know what's kind of interesting, kind of in closing here, is that if you remember at the conference at Energy this past year, is everyone wants to complicate this business. And we've talked about this a lot, but everyone wants to complicate it. Meanwhile, we had a bunch of the top CEOs in the world, $100 million CEOs, and they all said exactly the same thing in their own way. Keep things stupid, simple, right?
Yeah.
Be sure you're building recurring revenue bases, and that's how you ultimately build wealth, right?
And one of those things too.
What's that?
Raise prices.
And raise prices, and always raise prices.
That was the scariest thing to do.
Yep.
And it worked out great.
Yeah, you've done, yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
At all.
No, you never even hardly lost any customers raising prices?
Just the one huge customer that we didn't want anyway.
Yeah. That's a whole other dynamic about your business. It's interesting, you know? Yeah. So, well, Matt, what questions do you have for me, man? I mean, we're on session with Seth, but I'm sure I'm beating you up a little bit, so.
I thought about it, and I ask you so many questions so much that there's nothing I need to know.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of what people would want to know about you. And the only thing I can think is you're so tied into the industry from East Coast, West Coast, North, South. So you understand how we all do pest control.
Yeah.
Where do you see pest control technically and, you know, technologically in 10 years from now? How are we going to be doing pest control physically to people's houses?
Yeah.
And then how are we going to be dealing with all this information?
So, wow, it's a big question. And the one thing I'm going to talk philosophically versus in actuality, because I think about this all the time. And if you think about it, I have to think about it for two reasons. Number one, I've got to think about it from a client standpoint or the industry standpoint, because I'm obligated in the roles that my company has in order to ensure that we're protecting these companies through the path, right? To be sure that for you, we have to protect your business and be sure you know what's going on. The other thing that I want to bring up is that when I think about a subject like this, I think about it in time frame. And the reason I think about it in time frame is the fact that you're 53, you probably at 63, you're probably going to be retired. Would you agree?
I would like to be, yeah.
Right. And so the thing that's going to happen in 10 years doesn't affect you. However, the thing that's going to happen in 10 years might affect a guy coming out brand new today. Right. And so I always think about things in time frame. The last reason why I'm going to preface my answer is that I also have to think about is that when I make a comment like I'm going to make here in a second, is that it's going to give people really big ideas. And I don't want anyone to take these big ideas and try to go do it because we're not there yet. But I can tell you what I think is going to happen. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think pest control is going to dramatically shift. And the reality is that pest control tends to be 15 years behind whatever is going on. It's just the simple facts. And you hear me say it all the time is that if pest control wasn't that far behind, the stuff that we brought to the pest control industry from the tech world and from the diversified services world, we probably wouldn't be in business because the stuff's already happening. We just make it super polished for our industry, right?
Correct.
And so what I think the industry is going to look like in 10 years is this. I think number one, from a data management standpoint, is that I think that the large multinationals and then other strategics that are out there today, I think that they understand the power of data. And the reason that companies are getting bought at the price points they are is because they understand what they're going to do with that data in the future. And so you have all kinds of consumer data. Once you have all the consumer data in a database, you then can use other data sources to make your data better. And if you have better data, now you can actually sell consumers different products and services. Alternatively, as we progress down the road, is that I think, and I've talked about this before, is that I think that knowing buying habits of consumer data allows you to actually dynamically change pricing. And so if I know, and I'll give an example, if I know that my subset of databases is somebody who historically goes to Lululemon and historically buys $500 of clothes or such, so on and so forth, is that I know that there's a greater propensity that I can raise their price higher than someone who we know the buying data says that they don't do that. And I'll give 50 other examples, but that's one, right? And so I think in the future, in 10 years, is that we're gonna have dynamic pricing. And I think that the multinationals are gonna use this data to drive prices through the roof, which I think is gonna happen. I think that's one thing. The second thing that I think is gonna happen is I think that you're gonna see a dramatic shift in the recurring revenue models to where the recurring revenue potentially drops substantially. And so a company like you versus charging $100 a month or whatever it might be, is that I think that you're going to start to charge $10 or $12 a month. And then I think that everything's going to become on demand. And so I think that somebody's going to solve it. We actually did solve this. And we actually did solve it. We actually modeled it. We actually said, hey, let's build a tech where we could actually create a network of pest control companies. And someone could say, I need a company now, and the person just shows up, regardless of company.
Yeah, a lot like Home Advisor does with
exactly
a painter.
Exactly, and I think that you're going to see that. But I think what's going to happen is that the companies are going to actually control the narrative versus an aggregator controlling it. Is what I think is going to happen. And so I think the model is going to shift. So I think for a pest control company, you're not going to need, your labor is not going to be nearly as intensive. You're going to need a lot less trucks. Your recurring revenue is going to skyrocket, and you're going to operate more like a technology company, and that the fee for service model is actually going to be layered on top of it. Is what I think is going to happen.
Just more service.
Yeah, and I think it's going to happen. I think you're going to see a ton with sensors. Everyone's in sensors right now. I think we actually have a client who actually has a patent on a product where you no longer need hubs for sensors. You actually can take a picture and it automatically identifies and issues service calls. And it does reporting. It's beautiful. And ultimately, they're going to bring that to market. It's going to be a game changer. But I think that sensors are going to make a big difference. I think that you're going to see, I also think that a sensor is going to equal some type of an application. Someone's going to solve it where you have a sensor that says, hey, the weather is this, the chemical, the efficacy of a chemical is this, put application down, it's just going to treat right then and there live. I think you're going to see a lot of these things, and people are thinking about this and people are not, but I think that's what you're going to see in the future in 10 years.
Yeah, I do. I wonder about chemicals versus, the environment and how we're going to be dealing with all those things. I think pest control is the gateway to someone's home.
Yep.
And it's a home services. That concierge idea is really what I like, a monthly bill for all those needs and some more things.
Yeah, and I think the other part too is it's like who owns that relationship, and so as you know, we also consult in the home inspection space for the largest companies in the country, and in the home inspection space they're trying to do that too. And I think, but I do think that
It's all tied in.
yeah, it's all they try to tie it together, and I think that to your point, I think that someone's got to control that narrative, and so I think you'll see this big evolution.
I think the guy who's in the panty drawer will be the one who controls that.
I agree.
The best guy. We're in the most intimate places of the person's house.
They
trust us.
I don't disagree with you. I would agree with you. So, but anyway, man, was this cool today?
It's awesome.
You got any more questions for me?
No.
You good?
I'm good.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming out to do it, man. It's been awesome.
Awesome, man.
And yeah,
Thank you so much.
I'm super glad you're here. Super glad to call you a friend, and I'm just super grateful that you did this, man. So,
Man, thank you.
I hope you guys all enjoyed this, man. See you guys.